almost quit. I quit.
You quit?
Yeah. I mean, that is the reality, man.
To be a great leader doesn't mean you have to win at everything. What it does mean is how you carry yourself in everything you do.
A wounded warrior, a retired Navy SEALs. He is a speaker and author, a New York Times best-selling author of The Trident, Jason Redman.
Can I curse on this podcast?
Do you remember what was going through your mind at that moment?
Bullets.
I love your
No,
sense of
just
humor,
kidding.
man.
There was a lot going through my mind. I'll be honest. I am very thankful that they didn't kick me out, which was definitely what some people wanted to see happen. I didn't see it as an opportunity there. I saw it as punishment. I was pissed. Plenty of guys out there who may not like me and said, that guy's a fuck up and a failure. And they're 100% right. 100%. Although the difference is,
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another amazing episode of the Relentless Goal Achievers podcast. I can't tell you how excited I am today because I finally got him, ladies and gentlemen. He's been running around all over the world, but I got him. My good friend, a wounded warrior, a retired Navy SEAL, Jason Redman. If you don't know who he is, I don't know where you've been living. But he is a New York Times and Amazon bestselling author. He's got 2 books out there, Overcome and Trident. He's a speaker. He's an author. And I'm proud to call him my personal coach and mentor. So, Jay, welcome to the show.
Eric, honored to be on, man. Thank you.
Oh, it's so good to have you. Hey, when did you know that you wanted to be a Navy SEAL?
I was young, man. Probably about 14. You know, I had always wanted to be in the military. I came from a family of military members, so I grew up, stories about my grandfathers both fought in World War II. My grandfather on my dad's side, super decorated. He was a pilot, Distinguished Flying Cross. My dad jumped out of an airplane, so I thought that was really cool. And he was the one that actually told me about the SEALs. And I am a G.I. Joe generation young man. So, Snake Eyes and Storm Shadow and all these guys, Wetsuit, for those of you that really know your G.I. Joe lore. Wetsuit was the Navy SEAL from G.I. Joe. And
that's pretty cool.
All those things, I was like, man, I want to do this. And it led me down that path. My dad, SEALs actually used to go through Army Airborne School, including myself, all the way up until the early thousands. And then it switched over where the Army or the Navy was running its own school. But my dad had met SEALs in airborne school, so he was familiar with them. And he told me, he said, hey, I lived in the Virgin Islands off and on with my mom, so I was very comfortable in the water. And he said, hey, if you want to be part of the special operations community, you should check these guys out. And once I found out about them, I don't know why. I'm the most unlikely candidate, man. I wasn't like this super jock. I wasn't like this big strapping guy. I wasn't a fighter or anything like that, man. I was a scrawny little runt. But something about it made me say, this is what I want to do. And relentless goal. I set that goal and I never lost sight of it.
I love that. And I'm going to talk to you about your 3 R's for goal setting because I think that's brilliant. But the reason I started off with the SEALs thing is because you guys are a very tight-knit community and it's so secretive. The question, what I always wonder is when you go in, do you sign up and say, I'm going in as a SEAL, or do you just go into the Navy and then after doing certain things, you can then apply to be a SEAL?
So the program has ebbed and flowed and it's changed over the years. So when I came in, there was not a direct pipeline into the SEAL teams. Basically, there were rates. There were Navy jobs that you basically had to sign up for. And there were about, I don't know, maybe 20 or 25. You had to get one of these Navy jobs. So you went to boot camp. In boot camp, there would be a SEAL instructor that would come by your class one day. That's how I was told, and it did turn out that way. We happened to be at the pool at about the 3rd week of training, and this SEAL instructor came by and said, is there anybody in the class that wants to try out for SEAL training? And my recruiter had told me that. So there were probably about 10 of us who raised our hands, and we we tried out. I knew what the qualification test was. I'd been training for it, and I qualified myself, and there were 3 other guys that qualified out of the 10. And we, we made it. And then I had to go to my school. So in this case, it was intelligence specialist school in Virginia Beach. I had to graduate from that. And then that earned me the slot to go to SEAL training. It has developed over the years where we have direct pipelines, where now we have guys who actually can come in and say, I'm coming in only to be a SEAL. And, there's pros and cons to this. I will say, I really think it's almost even more competitive today. We have so many young men that want to be SEALs. We actually have a draft similar to the NFL. So what happens is these young men or women, if they qualify, they have opened it up. We have not had any women make it through yet, but it is now open. They basically say, I want to be a SEAL, and they have to academically qualify, which was no different from how I was. So you have to score a certain score on the ASVAB. And for all you people out there, I've had some people who, think that people in the military are not that smart. There are a lot of really smart people in the military, especially in special operations. And for SEALs, it is the second highest score you have to get on the ASVAB, only below the nuclear program. So only our enlisted nukes have a higher score on the ASVAB than SEALs to get into the program. So for all you studs out there who think you want to be a SEAL and all you're doing is working out and you're like, academics don't matter, you're setting yourself up for failure. So you got to academically qualify. You'll do some psychological screening. And then, of course, you have to take the screening test. And then they rack and stack you in this draft. And they pick based on not only all your scores, but they also look at all your extracurricular activities. They look at leadership attributes. They look at other things you've done, life experiences, language capabilities. If you lived in other places where maybe you have some culture that may help. So all these things will help guys now as they come into the program.
Man, I wish I knew about the Special Ops Command when I was in. The reason I'm asking you this is because I always wonder, like, for the guys who are coming straight in and saying, I'm going to be a SEAL, the dropout rate, even though they're screening them and they now have this draft. So I'm sure the dropout rates or the quit rates, failure rates are lower now with that. What happens to those guys who don't make it through BUD/S?
Most of the time they go to the regular Navy. I'll be honest, I'm going to caveat with I don't unequivocally know this answer. I had thought that there was a program that would allow guys to come in, and if they didn't make it through SEAL training, they didn't have to go in the Navy. I do not think that program is still in place. Okay. I think if you do not make it, you will go to the regular Navy. And there's nothing wrong with that. I know a lot of guys who did not make it and went to the regular Navy and then later came back. Okay. If you are an enlisted guy and you don't make it, you are allowed to come back within 2 years. Officers only get one slot, though. They only get one shot. If they're injured, they may be able to come back. If you quit, officers are never allowed to come back. They only get one shot.
Wow, that's awesome. I mean, talk about relentless goals. If you don't make it, you are done. Okay, we're going to transition this conversation because I want to talk to you about so much. I wish we had like 7 hours. There's a saying that says they're going to like you for your successes. They're going to love you for your failures. And as from the first time I met you in Texas, I've heard a little bit about you. I got this on my refrigerator, man. I got this in my office. My kids read it, and we'll go through that. You're a Navy SEAL. There's a lot to like about you. But then as I started learning about you and how you talk about your failures as a leader in Afghanistan and how you almost quit when you went through the Army, I think it was Army Ranger School. That's where I kind of...
Not almost quit. I quit.
You quit.
Yeah. I mean, that is the reality, man.
Tell us the Afghanistan story. Like what was the leadership mistake that you now know that you made back then?
Yeah. There's an interesting thing in our community. One, can I curse on this podcast?
Hell yeah. It's
Okay.
America.
Yeah, I love it. It's America, baby. You know, man, there's a lot. The special operations community is an interesting community. The SEAL community is an interesting community, man. We will eat our own. We are like a fucked up mean girl sorority, I swear. And there are plenty of guys out there who may not like me and say that guy's a fuck up and a failure. And they're 100% right. 100%. Although the difference is I don't hide behind my fuck up and failures. I own them. I speak about them all over the place. And that is the difference in this life. There are people who are successful and don't talk about their screw ups. And there are people who are just screw ups and then decided they would never move past it. That is the only difference between success and failure. That's it. And I failed, man. I crashed and burned as a leader. I got a big ego. I thought too highly of myself, and I made just a lot of poor decisions as a leader. I made the mistake as a leader of being afraid. Fear is a deadly thing across this life. And even today, guys, I'm struggling with fear as I try and level up in my speaking. How much more exposed, I have individuals who are coaching me. They're like, Jay, you got to be more vulnerable. You got to expose yourself more. Well, there's a level of fear that comes with that. Like, man, am I going to get canceled if I, deviate too far outside in the right, left limits of what society has placed on us? Leadership is no different. We all have these ideas of how we lead, and sometimes they're wrong. And I was too afraid to ask young guys, hey, man, I don't know how to do this. I saw that as a sign of weakness. And it ended up being my downfall because I started stepping on my toes. I started screwing up and I started hanging on way too tight, trying too hard to figure things out on my own, thinking that it was weak leadership as I was learning new tactics and new things and trying to be a better leader. I was doing all the exact opposite things. Then I made the age-old terrible mistake that so many of us make. I started nursing my sorrows with alcohol. Which only doubled down on damage to my credibility. So these things are happening. We're moving forward. I'm a young SEAL leader. I'm starting to get a bad name as a drunk and not that great of a leader. And all of it culminated with a bad call on a mission in Afghanistan in September of 2005. I made a bad call. If you want to read about it, I talk all about it in my book, The Trident. I talk about it in my book, Overcome. I never hide from the mistakes that I made. And I wanted to get into a fight. That is the reality of the situation. And I basically saw an opportunity to get into a fight, and I saw it as a shortcut to suddenly look like this great leader. And that's a very dangerous thing for combat leaders to do. It is not technically your job to get in a fight. That is a byproduct of your job. You may have to get into a fight. It may be part of your mission. It may be something like this. But instead, it's your job to accomplish the mission. It is your job to take care of the people you're leading. And for me, I wanted to get in the fight. And it was just a bad decision. And it was a decision that almost ended my career. On the bright side, I am very thankful that they didn't kick me out, which was definitely what some people wanted to see happen. And instead, out of that, one of the opportunities that came with it was to go to U.S. Army Ranger School. I didn't see it as an opportunity there. I saw it as punishment. I was pissed. I was like, I'm being thrown under the bus. I had this big victim mindset about it. And I was really bitter. And I went to Ranger School with this victim mindset. And once again, a very arrogant mindset. I showed up at Ranger School thinking, this is going to be a walk in the park, man. I'm a Navy SEAL. Ranger School is going to be cake. And big shout out to all my Rangers out there and those who have been through Ranger School. I am not a Ranger. I graduated Ranger School, which makes me Ranger qualified. Big difference between U.S. Army Rangers who are assigned to a Ranger battalion. So I want to throw that caveat out. But for those who have been through Ranger School is really hard. It is not as hard as SEAL training. SEAL training was definitely harder, but it was no joke. It was a kick in the nuts. And I showed up thinking it was going to be easy with a chip on my shoulder, and it led once again to my downfall. Bad attitude, arrogant, thought that I'd knock out the land nav course in enough time. So I kind of dragged my feet on it, waiting for the sun to come up, thinking I could move a lot faster and do the whole course in the sunlight. And I didn't. I failed. I did not finish the course. Of course, the ranger instructors, there's a lot of professional rivalry between SEALs and Rangers, and they were thrilled to see the SEAL not make it. And laid into me, started talking some shit, and I let my emotions get the best of me and told them that, they could stuff this course right up their ass. And they were like, "Are you quitting?" And in that moment of weak leadership and emotional weakness, I said yes. And they were glad. They were like, "Hey, we don't want weak people here. We don't want individuals who are not going to drive through." I mean, Rangers are taught, we accomplish the mission. No fail missions are part of special operations. So we can't have people that quit. So they sent me on my way to go meet the Ranger Colonel. And fast forward this story. All of this is in my book, The Trident. I will say I am very fortunate that the Ranger Colonel, who has become a friend of mine now, he retired, Major General KK Chin. He was the commanding officer of the Ranger Training Brigade back then. And he saved me from myself. Sometimes people need help on this path. So if you're a leader, your people sometimes aren't always going to make the best decisions. Sometimes they're going to have moments of weakness and they do something that may harm them for the long term. You don't have to, if they have consistently messed up over and over and over again, at that point, maybe you need to decide to let them go. But if it's a one time, or maybe they're going through a hard time, it's good leadership to help them grow through those moments. And man, Colonel Chin helped me do that and gave me a second chance. So guys, for those of you that have been to Ranger School and you're like, "Oh my God, they let you go back to your class." No, that was not the case. I went to Ranger School jail for a month and I picked up trash on Fort Benning for a month. And I'll tell you what, it was probably the best thing that ever happened to me. It gave me a moment to reflect, to really look at myself as not a good leader as much as I wanted to be. And I started reading leadership books and I started figuring out how to reinvent myself as I came back to be the leader I wanted to be, and a better leader. So, and that's what I managed to do later, but it took a hell of a lot of time, man. It was a very hard, I tell people it's the hardest path I've ever walked to come out of that failure. There were a lot of teammates who did not want to see me come back. They were not excited to see me come back to the SEAL teams. They wanted me kicked out. And it's the most difficult thing I've ever faced, to be ostracized from my own team, from friends, and to be told this community that I work so hard to be a part of that, "Hey man, you don't belong." So, the difference in this life, all of us are going to have, you might encounter some moment like this. It may be professional, it may be whatever it is. But the difference is, if you can continue to grind and you just focus on, okay, I'm going to execute every single day, slowly but surely you will find that success. And that's what happened with me.
Looking back at it now, Jay, what could you pinpoint one or two things that you did to gain their trust back?
Yeah, absolutely. One, I focused on, number one, leading myself. There were several things that happened. Number one, I focused on leading myself, and I focused on trying to be the best version of myself. I was trying to be everything to everyone the first time and was being nothing to anyone is really what I was doing the first time around. As a leader, you're never going to be you're never going to be great at everything. Everybody's got strengths and weaknesses. What people want to see from their leaders is that you're all in to the greatest of your abilities, that you're committed to whatever it is you're doing, whether it's business, whether it's your family, whether it's your, your health. And all of us are going to have higher levels. I mean, maybe you're a great runner. So for you, running is not that, you don't have to work very hard to run. We all know those guys like that. I was a great runner in the SEAL teams. I didn't have to work that hard at running, but I had to work pretty hard to build strength and things that other guys came natural to them. some guys were amazing fighters. I wasn't the best fighter. I was okay, but I wasn't just this incredible fighter. And those are things that I had to work on to try and be the best version of myself. So number one, try and be the best version of yourself. Recognize your weaknesses and try and amplify those weaknesses, and recognize your strengths, and don't use your strengths as to show the others how great you are. We actually had Colonel Chin in our Legacy Tribe coaching group the other night, and he told a great story about this, how they went for a run one day and he was a great runner. And they were kind of letting the group set the pace, and he decided to set this blistering pace. And when they finished the run, they kind of turned around and no one was behind. There was only a few people that were behind that could keep up with Lieutenant Chin back then. And the instructors were like, hey, good job, Lieutenant. You left everyone behind. So, there's a balance between our strengths and weaknesses. So number one, I focused on that. I focused on leading when I was called upon to lead, and I focused on following when I was called upon to follow. And I had a great mentor who helped me do that. He put me in situations, complicated situations where I could lead, and he knew it would accomplish two things. Number one, it would rebuild my trust with the guys because I had destroyed that trust. Leadership is all about trust and relationships. Your people have to trust that you are going to take care of them, that you're going to lead them and help them, and that you're looking out for their best interest. I mean, whether you run a company or a family or a military unit, it is built on trust. And I had broken that trust. So we had to build that back, and my boss was real smart on that. And the other thing, I had destroyed a little bit of trust in myself. It was hard to come back. And even today, man, I still have a lot of doubts and like, man, am I doing the right thing? And, you screwed things up. And I pushed through those. I pushed through those things, and I had to do that through all of that. And he really helped to try and build back some of that self-confidence as I drove forward.
Man, I love what you said about that. And I destroyed self-trust in myself. When we don't lead ourselves, that's what really destroys self-trust. It's like, I'm going to get up tomorrow at 5 a.m. and go work out. And then 5 a.m. comes and you snooze it. There's a little part of you that's like, you're a jackass. You don't do what you say you're going to do. You suck. And I feel like that deteriorates us more than anything else. Can we shift a little bit to, I think your injury happened, if I remember correctly, September of 2007?
That's right.
Could you just briefly talk a little bit about that? I mean, you guys are, you walk out of a house, get the call, hey, we just saw 5 dudes running around, run out of a house into some brush. You're walking through the brush, and I believe your medic stepped on an actual fighter that's laying there waiting to ambush you guys, and all hell broke loose. Did I get that right?
Yep, you did. The fighter tried to roll over. Our medic engaged him. Our medic was one of the last guys out of that vegetation. The rest of us had stepped into this ambush line that had been set up. And when our medic, Luke, engaged that guy, the whole ambush was triggered. And we were right in what we call the kill zone. So all the enemy was facing in the direction where we were standing. 2 PKM machine guns. We estimate 12 to 15 shooters. And withering, a very well executed ambush and crossfire. Our medic was hit right off the bat. He took a round below the knee, almost severed his leg. One of our other guys ran forward, grabbed him, dragged him back to tractor tire that was about maybe 10 yards out in front of this ambush line. And then there was a lone tree that one of our other guys, DJ, fell behind. I was out front. I tried to lay down fire and was quickly shot. I took rounds across the body armor. I took a round in the arm, which actually ended up being 2 rounds, but I didn't know that at the time. I thought my arm had been shot off. I took rounds, helmet, left night vision tube shot off, rounds off my gun, rounds off my right side plate, and turned to try and move back to where the guys were. And that's when I caught a round in the face, traveled through my face, took off my nose, blew out my cheekbone. a lot of damage that then also knocked me out. So I owe my life to my teammates. And I owe my life to an Air Force AC-130 gunship that was up overhead. They brought in the closest fire mission ever executed in the Iraq War. My team leader literally called fire directly on our position. And miraculously, we survived and no one was injured. We managed to take out the enemy. My team leader ran forward under fire to get me, got a tourniquet on my arm and saved my life. And that over about a 40-minute period that all engaged before finally the medevac came in and managed to get us out of there and get me to a hospital to save my life and the life of my teammates.
Do you remember what was going through your mind at that moment?
Bullets.
I love your sense of humor, man.
I didn't get shot in the mind.
Bullets were going through my mind. Yeah.
There was a lot going through my mind. I'll be honest, in the first part of it, and this is a credit to our training, I often talk about the Overcome mindset is built on 3 principles: awareness, preparation, and action. The SEAL teams had done an amazing job of training me over many years that culminated with that combat deployment. I was aware, and we had seen a lot of combat in that deployment. I was aware, hey, we can be shot at, things can happen. We had prepared, we had done a lot of training, and now we were ready to take action. And we did initially. And anytime, you start, when things start to go wrong, our preparation is both our mental and our contingency planning that we do. So in the military, we have immediate action drills. If that doesn't work, hey, what becomes next? What are our contingencies? So my first thing after I was shot and I was pinned down, I was playing through all these different things, how we dealt with this situation. I frequently in all my talks talk about get off the X. We were pinned on that X. The X is the point of attacks, point of crisis, point of the ambush. In this scenario, we were the ones on the X and we were pinned down. So how do we get off the X? So I remember thinking through all those different things, like where were other guys? We had a quick reaction force. We had drones. We had helicopters. We had the gunship. My guys were behind me. I quickly kind of came to the realization, mainly because I was losing a lot of blood, that I was out of the fight. One, I was pinned down. I couldn't get up. Literally, this gunfight was happening directly over me. I was laying on my back and the bullets were traveling right above me. So I couldn't really get up. Instead, I suddenly had to trust my guys. We have been trained that you have to win the fight first. Guys can't run forward into fire to get you because now they're going to be shot. So I knew I had to trust my guys to win that gunfight. So that was kind of my second thought. I tried to get a tourniquet on, get a self tourniquet on my arm, but I had lost so much blood at this point. I'll be honest, I was too weak to do it. So I just was like, I just got to be patient, man. I just got to wait and I got to stay awake to stay alive. So I focused on that. And then my thoughts turned to my family. I thought a lot about my family, my wife and kids. I had lost so much blood that I was starting to show the signs of shock. I was getting cold. It was hard to breathe. It was hard to move my extremities. And I was accepting a little bit that, hey man, you're going to die here. Which is, it's hard to face your own death. I'll tell you that. My life definitely, I don't want to say it flashed before my eyes. I will say more that I thought about things that I had not done that I wish I had done. I thought about things I had done that I wish I hadn't done. I had a lot of regrets. And in that moment, I called out to God and I said, hey, I really need strength to make it home. I want to see my wife and kids again. And I had strength in that moment. I was just suddenly had energy. I don't know how long it took for the fire mission, for my team leader to come get me, to get the tourniquet on my arm. Like I said, we know that timeline was roughly 40 minutes. But I went from, barely being able to move a muscle to when the medevac came in, with my team leader's help, I was able to get to my feet and I walked and got to the helicopter under my own power. So, so that was the sequence of events.
Wait a second. You walked to the helicopter. Was your eyeball your eyeball dropped out of its place, right? Because the cheekbone was completely most of your bones were jacked up, right?
My face was very messed up.
And you
So
walked?
definitely, I mean, I had a hole in my face and I walked. Yeah. I very vividly, there are things that stand out in my mind. One of the thoughts that is very vivid in my mind is I remember walking to the helicopter and there was light coming off the helicopter and I could see the blood pouring out of my face. I remember I was walking, looking down at the ground, and I have this mental image of my gear and blood pouring out of my face. I also have a mental image, the Black Hawk helicopter. So TF-160th, our Night Stalkers, the Army Aviation best pilots and helicopter squadron in the world. They were our medevac. And I remember when I was getting to the helicopter, there is a metal handle on the door right next to the gunner and the crew chief. And I remember grabbing that handle, and there's just that image is seared on my mind, grabbing that handle, and I have blood all over my gloves. So I don't know. It's interesting what images stay in your mind from stuff like that.
That's crazy that you were you lost a shitload of blood. The fact that you were able to walk, it had to be pure adrenaline or something. At what point did you just pass out and wake up somewhere else?
In the hospital, they were asking me, hey, did you ever lose consciousness? And I was adamant I never lost consciousness. I found out later that was not true. I drifted in and out of consciousness all through the gunfight and through the helicopter ride. Yeah, in my mind, when I lost consciousness, when I got to the operating room, I let go at that point. But, my teammates told me, hey man, yeah, we weren't sure. The crew chief, an interesting fact, I met the crew chief and some of the helicopter and the flight medic years later, and they were telling me stories about that flight. They didn't even know we survived. They dropped us off and they flew off, and it was only years later that I reached out and found them just to thank them. And the crew chief told me he was working on our other guys in the helicopter also, my other two teammates who had been shot up. So they had me leaning against the inner frame of the helicopter next to the crew chief. And he had me put my fist with my thumb up, sitting up to try and keep from, suffocating on my own blood. And if my hand would drop, the crew chief would smack me to try and get me to wake up, so interesting.
That is insane. So did you go to Bethesda?
Yes.
That's where most of it was done. And how long? So now you're laying there. As I read your stories, I listen to your stories, I always wonder what's going on here in your mind, right? How long? What was the time frame between you getting there and you writing this note?
We think 7 to 10 days.
That's it.
We don't know the exact. Yeah, it was pretty soon after I got there. And I will admit, so it was an interesting thing. In the very beginning, I remember being elated. When I came out of that surgery and I found out I was still alive, I was so happy to still be alive. I was so thrilled. I did not think I was going to make it. So I was so thankful. And then, over the next probably 48 to 96 hours, that elation, the reality of the situation started to set in. The pain started to set in. How badly I was messed up started to set in. My face and head started to swell tremendously. There is a picture we have from one of the earliest, probably right after I got to Bethesda, or a couple of days after I got to Bethesda. And my head is so swollen. Both eyes are bloodshot red. All the stitches look like they're ready to burst out. I look like Frankenstein. And I remember in the beginning, that was really hard. I was really struggling. I was having nightmares about the firefight. I had crazy nightmares. I couldn't sleep. They put me on some kind of drug that was supposed to help me sleep, and it only gave me the most bizarre nightmare. I think I wrote about this in the book. I mean, that it was the craziest nightmare I've ever had. I actually dreamed that I wasn't that I wasn't wounded in the manner that I was wounded. I was actually wounded worse, and it was like the Metallica song where the guy's wounded, but he's totally paralyzed and he can't move. The only thing he can do is like blink his eyes.
Mm-hmm.
So I dreamed that's what was going on with me, which is fucking terrifying. It was crazy. But I was really struggling. Man, did I make the right decision? A lot of the doubts from what had happened before crept back in. Like, man, you're a fuck up. Like, you did this. And I finally caught myself probably, I don't know, day 5. I finally stopped myself and I was like, dude, like, hey, one, did you do everything according to our tactics? And the answer was yes. And I said, I can't go back and change the past. All I can do is move forward into the future. So you got to start driving forward. You got to start focusing on the path forward. And that, it was only a few days after that the sign on the door came to be.
Damn. So for those of you who are listening and don't know the sign, do you mind if I read it?
Yeah, please do.
So you gotta picture the situation. A few days after being shot up, at this point, they were thinking they were going to have to amputate your left arm. Face got shot through the back by the ear, nose blown out, face bones completely fucked up, looking like Frankenstein. And in this condition, this is the note that Jason wrote. Attention to all who enter here. If you're coming into this room with sorrow or to feel sorry for my wounds, go elsewhere. The wounds I received, I got in a job I love doing, for people I love, supporting the freedom of a country I deeply love. I am incredibly tough and will make a full recovery. What is full? That is an absolute utmost physically my body has the ability to recover. Then I will push that about 20% further through sheer mental tenacity. This room you're about to enter is a room of fun, optimism, and intense, rapid regrowth. If you're not prepared for that, go elsewhere. From management. I freaking love it, man. Why was it so important for you in that moment to not have people who feel bad for you around you?
I think, it's part of the world we live in today. There's a tendency when bad things happen to you that we make excuses for people to be victims. Oh my God, this terrible thing happened. So it's okay for you to sit there and feel bad and sit on the X, as I like to call it. And I mean, there is a period of time that we need to grieve. Loss is loss, man. And the process of grief is, traumatic events lead to loss and grief. But at the same time, we need to encourage people to get up and drive forward as quickly as possible. Because what I've come to find, the longer you sit there and feel sorry for yourself, it's like quicksand, and the harder it is to get up. As a matter of fact, what I've come to find is a lot of people get comfortable and that becomes their new normal. And they suddenly become a victim, and everything is about this victimness that, oh, this horrible thing happened to me. And like, they will come up with every excuse in the world why, oh, this terrible thing happened to me, so this allows me to lay on this X and just be worthless. And I just disagree with that. And I don't know, something sparked me to say that ain't going to be me. I'm going to drive forward. I'll be honest. I think some of that came out of that leadership failure and having to navigate through so much negativity and hardship and, people saying, we don't want you to make it. I was like, man, I've watched this movie before. Like, we're writing a new plot, and the new plot is relentless positivity. So, jump on my train or don't come in.
Oh man, I love that so much. I want to hit 2 points with you. One is PTSD. Do you still have the nightmares? Or if you don't, how did you get those to stop?
Not anymore. I did in the first several years. No, I have significant more nightmares from being an entrepreneur now. I won't lie. This is an interesting world we live in, and that's a whole nother conversation. But yeah, the trauma from war is hard. And everyone has to figure out what is your own path. And there's a lot of different modalities that are out there, from stellate ganglion block to counseling to rapid eye movement therapies to hyperbaric therapy to psychedelic therapies. There's all kinds of therapies. And what I tell guys is you have to figure out what works for you. And just because something worked for someone else doesn't mean it's going to work for you. I meet a lot of guys who are struggling from post-traumatic stress, or gals, and they try one thing and they say, well, that didn't work for me. And then they go right back to laying on that ex and being that victim again. Oh, I tried this and it didn't work. Hey, man, you would never conduct a mission and try one thing and be like, yep, we failed. So sorry, we failed on this mission. You know, you would regroup and you would figure out a way to reattack, and you've got to treat it the same way. So for me, there were a whole bunch of modalities. Stellate ganglion block helped me. I also did hyperbaric treatment. I did a lot of counseling and therapy. You know, even this day, I mean, recently I went back to counseling and therapy because wrestling with some of the demons I have in my mind. I think this is the most dangerous battlefield you'll ever walk on. And I've been through a lot in my life, but I don't have all the answers by any means. And if you give in to this negative demon that lives in your head, which a lot of wounded warriors or people that have been through trauma do, it will consume you and it will never allow you to get up and live your full self. So you owe it to yourself to find different ways and to exhaust everything you can to find the things that'll work for you so that you can be the best version of yourself.
Have you ever read Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning?
Yep. Great book.
He says in it, a man who has a will to live will conquer anyhow, something along those lines. But pretty much the premise of that book is, as long as you have a purpose that you're living for, you can overcome anything. And it sounds like, it seems to me like you are so purpose driven right now. I mean, your purpose is clear, to help people overcome wherever they're stuck and get them off their X. I could never talk to you, just look at your Instagram post, read a couple books, and I know that's this guy's purpose. So great job on communicating that. But do you believe those who might be suffering from PTSD, if they got super focused on a new mission, a new purpose, they would suffer less?
Yeah, and I'd also say that, yes, I will say this. Purpose is a huge thing, but it's not perfect. It's not like one day you wake up and it's just there's perfect peace and you're like, oh. I am really going to be working in my social media and stuff, being a lot more vulnerable, because I think I project all the time that I'm like perfect. Like I don't have any doubts or fears. And guys, I have a lot. I struggle with them a lot. And I need to be better about that and admitting that, because no one is perfect. No one does not have those doubts and fears and struggle with those. They may say they don't, but I don't believe that they're not there. And some of us have them bigger than others. I have a lot of big scars that have occurred in my life. I mean, that failure as a young leader is a very deep scar. And it frequently creeps up. I also was a little scrawny runt when I was in school. I got bullied. I got stuffed in a trash can several times by assholes. I still see that guy sometimes. And so why do I tell you that? If you think that I have it all figured out, I don't. You want to know the difference between you and I keep driving forward and taking action. I keep trying to be positive and lift others up. It doesn't mean that sometimes I don't struggle or I don't have doubts or fears, or sometimes, I don't want to climb out of bed either. But guess what? I do it. And that is the difference. So if you're waiting for perfection, if you're waiting to think that you're never going to have doubts or fears, guess what? It ain't ever going to happen.
Yeah. I always wonder, looking at you, I can only imagine that there was a point in your life where you had imposter syndrome. Because now you speak on stages. I mean, big companies,
I still,
you still
wait. I still have imposter syndrome.
Imposter syndrome
every
bigger
day.
than what you're experiencing now. Like the first time you had to go on stage, right? Forget the imposter syndrome where, well, shit, I'm a Navy SEAL. What the fuck do I know about going into companies and training their leaders, right? Like I can imagine that going through your mind. But even physically, right? Just getting up with your scars, with your face being through so many different surgeries and going through that, like that alone, I'll tell you, I'll get a cold sore on my lip and you won't see my ass on camera for like 3 weeks until that shit goes away. You know what I mean? So how did you overcome that? Or how do you continue to overcome these things?
I just continue to drive forward, man. I'll be honest. Recently, the imposter syndrome has been really loud for me. I'll be honest, my social media has slowed down a little bit. I feel like we're putting out great content. And I think this just has a lot to do with the algorithm. It has a lot to do with more and more people are out there putting out content. So there's a lot of noise out there. How do you break out of that noise? And it's made me recently say, well, God, am I really, where am I in this? Or am I doing the right thing? Or man, am I really cut out to do this? And you have to remind yourself that yes, that is the answer. If you feel like that is your purpose and you're led to do that, then, the answer is action. And I that's one of the biggest things that the keys to my success. Don't listen to that voice. Everyone has felt like an imposter at some point. You will again. I don't know why, it's how we're made, but I try to ignore it. And I can't even say that. I ignore it and I continue to drive forward.
It's freaking awesome, Jay. Talk to us about how you set goals.
I set goals by looking at, and I'll be honest, I'm recently changing. I have met with, usually I would set goals by identifying where I wanted to go. And then I came back to the beginning and I would identify all the steps. A business is a lot different. And I'll tell you, the people who are at the highest levels of business, they look at where do they want to be in this business. I was talking to a guy who's achieved the American dream, damn near a billionaire. And he talked to me about every single thing he did in business. He would identify what is the number and time I intend to be at with this if I'm going to go in and do it. And then he starts to reverse engineering. Now, granted, he has been in business a long time. I'm newer in the entrepreneurship world, so I'm learning. But I want to start looking at the world that way. I think that's really smart. Like time and money are where I want to be. And then what level of effort and what plan and what people do I need to put in place to execute that and then reverse engineer it back to the beginning.
Can you?
So
I don't think I understand that fully. I get the money part, obviously, but what does it mean time-wise? Like a certain date to be there by or something different? Got it.
Yes, a certain date.
Okay.
Like, hey, I'm going to do the, like for me right now, recently, I set a 10-year plan. So I set a 10-year plan. I will turn 49 here shortly. I would love to be, my goal is to have a level of financial freedom. What does that mean? For me, that means that I never have to look at my bank account again. It doesn't mean, I'm going to go out and buy a Ferrari every other day. I mean, obviously, that's a whole insane level of wealth. But what it means for me is I want to be able to do the things I want to do. I love to ski. I want to be able to go skiing when I want. I love the beach and tropical Caribbean climate. I want to own a condo down in Southern Florida and be able to go down there when I want. And I never want to have to look at my bank account and go, hey man, do I have enough money to do this? I want to create enough reserve that it's generating money on my return every year that I know, hey, I can live an amazing life and never have to worry about that. And I've also put things in place that'll turn over to my kids, that legacy that I want to leave for them. That's my 10-year plan. So some of that I need to narrow because right now I'm doing a lot of different things. And I'm realizing, okay, I need to cut out the things that aren't providing the return as quickly as I need within these 10 years and focus on the things that are going to get me there. So that's kind of where my focus is right now in 2024.
How do you differentiate a sound goal from a dream?
A sound goal is something you can achieve. A dream, you can have big dreams, don't get me wrong, but you can also have unrealistic dreams. If I said I wanted to play in the NFL, that's an unrealistic dream. It's never going to happen. I lack the speed, the size, the skill, all of these different things. I'm too old. So I think dreams need to be realistic. I mean, could I ever become a billionaire? That's a really big dream. And I know there are individuals out there who say, well, man, if you put it down, you can make it happen. That's a big dream. I would much rather put it in stages and say, for me, there's a specific number that I'm trying to hit, but it's tied to a combination of real estate assets. All of it comes together. For me, it really becomes a number on annual income that all my assets are generating every year. So that I think that's the difference. I mean, there are some people who just say a goal is very specific. A dream oftentimes is kind of vague.
I got to tell you, I'm surprised to hear you say that, man. The realistic part. So my biggest beef with SMART goals is the R, the realistic part. I usually say it like they do in Boston, SMAT goals, like get the R out of there and then I look at you like what you've accomplished isn't realistic. Like you're not supposed to lift anything above 50 pounds. I remember you talking about lifting 200 pounds with that arm, right? Like, so whose reality is it? Yeah, maybe you're not going to play in the NFL, but don't set that shit as your goal, right? I don't know. I think everything you've done hasn't been realistic, all of it. I mean, a lot of it. But yeah, I totally get what you're saying.
Yeah, for me, it's incremental growth. I mean, trust me, I wish I could tell you I'm like this super smart business guy. I'm not. I'm a slow learner. I am the tortoise in the race, not the rabbit. And sometimes that's hard. Imposter syndrome kicks in from that because I have watched. I mean, I've been in the influencer space now for at least 5 years, and I've watched people that have come in the last several years who have just eclipsed me. When my book first came out, nobody knew who David Goggins was, and now. Man, David Goggins. Do you know David Goggins? We love David Goggins. Fucking David Goggins. And hey, man, hats off to Goggins, man. He's built a hell of a platform. And Jocko too, man. Jocko has built a hell of a platform. Those guys have eclipsed me. But I am executing my plan. And one of the things that, it's always been one step after. I just put one foot in front of the other and I continue to grow. Now, I'm hoping I can increase my growth factor by being a little smarter as I grow and wisdom, experience, and, extra dollars and allocate them better. But, it's my journey. I try not to compare. I am guilty of comparing. And that's where the imposter syndrome starts to kick in. Like, hey, man, am I really supposed to be doing this?
That's that OCD, isn't it?
That's right. Obsessive comparison disorder, baby.
Dude,
dangerous.
I learn a lot from you, Jay. Seriously, I really do learn a lot from you. You're such an inspiration. I love what you're doing with entrepreneurs, with men these days. You have a few programs out there for guys like me, for guys who are maybe not as far along, and for guys who are way further than I am, and women too. Can you just share a little bit about, like, if somebody needs help, if somebody feels like they're on the X or just got off the X and they don't know where to go next, what you have to offer for them?
Yeah, I'm really excited to be a coach in the Legacy Tribe. The Legacy Tribe is our entrepreneurship program that I am a co-founder with Bedros Keuilian. Bedros is the lead coach. If any of you don't know who Bedros is, amazing story. Armenian immigrant. His family immigrated. Literally, his dad was part of the Communist Party and came to America. They came here with nothing, and really Bedros embraced the American dream, and it did not happen overnight. He also describes him as a tortoise in this race. I mean, he worked for probably 20 years before he started to really start to hockey stick up on the wealth level, and has built multiple companies and now is a coach for very high level people. But he wanted a program that he could connect with the average everyday entrepreneur, because most of us, hell, myself included, I can't afford $100,000 to hire Bedros to be my coach for the year. So he wanted to connect, and he had this idea for the Legacy Tribe, and it became a tribe of growing entrepreneurs that we could all be together and work with one another and learn. And they get, 1 day a week coaching from Bedros. They get 1 day a week coaching from Bryce Henson, CEO of Fit Body Bootcamp. Bryce really brings the organizational leadership and structure from running a Fortune 500 company. And then you have myself bringing the mindset and resilience side. And then we bring in guest coaches. We also give access to the vault. We have hot seat coaching where you can bring your questions on your business. And between the three of us and really Bedros with that, 30 plus years of entrepreneurship experience. And then we have get-togethers where everybody can get together. So we're really excited. We launched that program last year. Eric, it's awesome to have you as a member.
Love being in it.
And we're really trying to help people, move up into that second, the 2.0 version of themselves.
Awesome. Who did you write? And by the way, super affordable. I think it's designed for people who are in business but don't have a huge budget. Really, really affordable. I think it's under $300 a month, but it's so worth it. Just to be on a call and be able to ask Bedros a question is worth more than that, because people spend tens of thousands of dollars, for half a day with him. It's insane. So I'm so glad that you guys did it. Keeps my mindset sharp as a tack. Plus you get your Point Man. Whole Point Man curriculum is in there. So we get a full training from you. Anyway, guys, we'll link it.
Yeah, that's a $500 value, my Point Man for Life course.
It's a great course.
Yeah, all that stuff's in the vault. You have many of Bedros's marketing, his sales courses are in the vault. Bryce's training is in the vault. So we put all that stuff. You have access to all those things.
Bedros had people coming out to California for $5,000 for a 3-day or 2-day thing with him. And the recording of that entire program is in there. And I've been geeking out. I mean, it's improved by how I'm thinking about marketing my business. So it's really, really cool. Jay, I want to honor your time. I know you got another meeting. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being so authentic. If you guys are listening and you're not following Jay Redman, get over there, give him a follow, let him know what you thought about this episode, and leave us a comment. Let us know if you had any aha moments, or maybe you're on X and you need to get off and do something. If you're not in our Facebook group yet, get your butt over there, Relentless Goal Achievers community, and I'll see you guys on the next episode. Jay, thank you so much for being here, my friend.
Yeah, man. If you're looking for more, jasonredman.com. You can find all my socials and all that stuff. Eric, thank you, brother.
Thank you.